She covertly dismantles a shower faucet, pocketing the detached metal piece as potential weapon before dressing in the maid's uniform he provided. The grandfather clock struck 5 when the first scream echoed through the plaza. Not a man's dying roar, but the high guttural shriek of a woman in terror. Vianne froze mid-step on the staircase, her fingers tightening around the brass faucet's handle hidden in her sleeve. The sound came from the east wing where Jungkook kept his problem solvers. A maid scurried past, her eyes downcast, arms laden with bloody linens. Vianne carved the girl's wrist too fast to precise for a cafe worker and felt the pulse rapid against her fingers. Who screamed? The maid pupils dilated, her breath coming in a shallow gasp as she tried to pull away. Vianne tightened her grip, not enough to bruise, just enough to remind the girl who held the leverage. The scent of bleach and iron wafted from the linens between them. Answer, Vianne murmured, low enough that the security cameras near the stairwell wouldn't catch it. She titled her head, letting a single tear drag down her cheek, the perfect picture of terrified concern. The maid's lip trembled like a moth wings against glass. The Italian's wife, she stammered, her gaze darting toward the east wing's valuated corridor. They are making her watch. Vianne released the girl's wrist slowly, her fingers trailing along the maid's pulse point. One final silent warning. The linen slipped to the marble with a wet slap as the maid fled, leaving bloody fingerprints on the banister. The faucet handle dug into Vianne's palm as she turned toward the east wing. Not the maid's designated path, but the service corridor where the surveillance cameras had a blind spot. She counted the steps under her breath, 14 to the alcove, 7 more to the dumbwaiter shaft. The scent of amaretto and cordite grew thicker with each step, clinging to the tapestries like a warning. A muffled sob echoed through the walls. Vianne pressed her ear to the paneling, catching the wet sound of a blade sinking into flesh, too clean for anger, too precise for rage. Jungkook's voice, calm as a surgeon's, murmured nothing in Italian. The woman's whimper that followed was almost musical in its despair. The dumbwaiter shaft smelled of rancid olive oil with cordite, the ghost of last night's dinner and this morning's executions. Vianne wedged her shoulder into tight space, her knees scraping against century-old brick as she descended hand over hand. The brass faucet handle clenched between her teeth. 15 feet down, the shaft intersected with the east wing's ventilation system. Her pulse hammered in time with the dripping pipes. A grate gave way beneath her fingertips, revealing the scenes below disjointed slices. Jungkook's polished oak forge planted on the Persian rug, his shadow stretching long and lean across a woman's crumpled form. Blood seeped through the silk of her blouse in blooming church patterns. The vents cross-shattered metal pressed gold against Vianne's cheek as she angled for a better view below. Jungkook crouched beside the sobbing Italian woman, his switchblade flicking open with a sound like a breaking bone. Moonlight through the stained glass window painted his hand in fractured colors, sapphire and ruby dripping from his fingers as he turned the knife in slow circles. "Look at me," he murmured in accented Italian. The woman flinched when he tapped the flat of the blade against her trembling chin. Your husband betrayed me with 3 words scribbled on a napkin. His thumb swiped through the blood on her collarbone, smearing it like a lipstick. How many do you think I'll need to break you? The dumbwaiter cable groaned under Vian's weight as she shifted just enough to see Jungkook's knife trace the woman's jugular without breaking skin. His thumbs pressed into the hollow of her throat, a mockery of tenderness as he leaned closer. Trey, he whispered. The blade dripped lower. Do. Vian's muscles locked. She knew that countdown. Had felt his breath against her own neck in that same sedance. 3 nights ago, the brass faucet handle bit into her palm as she cocked the drop. 15 feet onto marble. No element of surprise subsides. The Italian woman's scream shattered on a guttural broken sound that dissolved into wet coughing. Vian's finger flexed around the brass faucet handle. Not yet. Below, Jungkook stood in a fluid motion, wiping his blade on a monogram handkerchief. The woman crumpled like a discarded marinette, her blood spreading in a slow circle around her head. Jungkook didn't glance back as he strode toward the velveted doorway, his shadow stretching grotesquely across the frescoed walls. The dumbwaiter cable bit into Vian's palms as she held herself suspended, breath fogging the cold brass of faucet handle clenched between her teeth. Jungkook's footsteps receded down the marble corridor. 8 paces. Pause at the grandfather clock. The faint click of his lighter. The scent of cloves and crudite lingered like a ghost. She counted to 30 before dropping soundlessly into the pantry. Broken biscotti crunched underfoot as she navigated by memory past the flour sacks left at the amaretto barrels. The service door's hinges squeaked when she pressed her weight against them. The sound drawn by a sudden burst of gunfire from the east courtyard. The hinges screamed louder than the dying woman had. Vian froze mid-step, ankle deep in flour spilled from a torn sack. Her pulse hammering against the brass faucet handle still clenched between her teeth. The scent of gunpowder and almond paste clung to her skin as she counted the footsteps echoing beyond the pantry doors. 3 sets, 2 cars in Loafer, 1 in Oxford. Jungkook paused outside the pantry. Vian could smell his cologne through the rack in the door, bergamot and blood. His shadow stretched across the floor-dusted floorboards. Black silk shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows, forearms streaked with a red that wasn't his own. The guard's breathing hitched when he tilted his head, listening to the silence Vian had forgotten to fill. The dumbwaiter shaft groaned under Vian's weight as she pressed deeper into the shadows, floor dust clinging to her eyelashes like a phantom snow. Jungkook's Oxford paused directly below, close enough that she could see the fresh scratch across the leather toe where her grey-foot knife had grazed him hour earlier. His cufflinks carved the dim light as he reached up, fingertips brushing the dumbwaiter's pulley rope. Vian's held her breath, the brass faucet handle pressed cold against her ribcage, where she detected beneath the maid's uniform. The pulley rope creaked under Jungkook's finger, his knuckle whitening around the frayed hem. Floor shifted down from the dumbwaiter shelf above, catching in his eyelashes like ash. Vian pressed her spine against the cold brick, counting the second between his breaths. 7, always 7, until his grip loosened. Sir, a guard shifted near the amaretto barrel's hand hovering over his holster. The Colombians are. The pantry door swung open before the guard could finish. Jungkook's heart filled the doorway, backlit by the chandelier fractured glow. Floor particles hung suspended in the air between them, like unspoken execution. His gaze swept the room past the overturned biscotti tin, over the floor smeared footprints leading to the dumbwaiter, and settled on the shadowed corner where Vian pressed herself flat against a wine barrel. Out, Jungkook said, so softly the word barely disturbed the floor. Thus the guards exchanged glances but obeyed, their loafers coughing against the blood-stained marble as they retreated. The door clicked shut behind them. The wine barrels would pressed cold against Vian's spine as Jungkook stepped forward, his Oxford crushing biscotti shards into the floor-dusted floor. His shadow shallowed the pantry hole, long fingers trailing along the amaretto casks, posing at the streaky fingerprint she left near the dumbwaiter controls. Clever, he murmured, thumb smearing her half-dried blood across the pulley mechanism. His knuckle brushed the fried rope she climbed down, but not clever enough. The faucet handle burned against Vian's ribs as Jungkook's shadow inched closer, his fingers now tracing the floor-dusted path of her footprints. Each step he took resonated through the wooden floorboards, deliberate, unhurried, as if savoring the hunt. The scent of amaretto turned cloying in the cramped space, mingling with the iron tang of blood still clinging to his rolled-up sleeves. Vian counted the bottles in the wine rack beside her, 12 Bordeaux, 7 Burgundies, one with the neck slender enough to shatter into a weapon. Her pulse hitched when Jungkook paused to examine a smeared handprint on a chanting cask, his head tightening at the precise angle she'd used to open the dumbwaiter. Jungkook's finger curled around the wine bottle beside her smudged handprint, not the slender-necked Bordeaux she'd been eyeing, but a squint chanting with the glass shattering weight. The bottle's shadow stretched long across the floor-dusted floor as he turned it slowly, inspecting the fingerprints she'd left in the dust. You counted the patrols, he mused, his thumb wiping away her remarks with methodical precision. But you forgot about the pantry cameras. The faucet handle bit into Vian's palms as she registered the red light blinking above the amaretto barrels, a blind spot eliminated. Jungkook's smile didn't reach his eyes when he lifted the bottle by its neck, the glass catching the light like a guillotine blade. 12 exits mapped, he counted, stepping closer until his polished Oxford touched the toes of her stolen-made shoes. But you never planned for the one where you want to stay. The chanting bottle swung without warning, not toward her skull but into the wine rack beside her. Glass exploded like sharpnel, spraying Burgundy and Bordeaux across the floor-dusted floor in aspherical arcs. Vian flinched instinctively, but Jungkook's free hand was already fisted in her collar, yanking her forward through the raining shards. You taste like almonds, he murmured against her temple, his breath warm through the cold panic flickering her skin. His thumb brushed her lower lips, meeting floor and something darker. Poison or pastry? The faucet handle slipped between Vian's grip as Jungkook's grips tightened, his knuckles pressing into her windpipe just enough to make her vision pulse at the edges. She tasted blood, hers or his, she couldn't tell, mingling with the almond flowers still clinging to her lips. Pastry, she gasped, flexing her wrist to let the brass fixture clatter to the floor. A calculated risk. Jungkook's nostrils flared as it rolled toward the wine puddle. His pupils dilated at the glint of metal. His free hand cuffed her before she could fake surrender, pinning it against the barrel behind her with enough force to bruise. The pantry air thickened with the cloying stench of crushed fig grapes and gunpowder as Jungkook's grip shifted, not tighter but different, his thumb pressing into the hollow of her throat where her pulse thrummed against his skin. Vian's vision blurred at the edges, not from asphyxiation but from the deliberate maddening pressure he applied to her carotid, a calculated deprivation just shy of unconsciousness. Liar, he murmured, his lips brushing the shell of her ear as his free hand trailed down her arm to where the faucet handle lay glinting in spilt wine. He didn't retrieve it. Instead, his finger closed around her wrist, dragging her palm over the jagged edge of the shattered Bordeaux bottle, still embedded in the rack. Blood welled instantly, bright against the floor, dusting her skin. You counted every exit, but this one, the Bordeaux shard bit deeper as Jungkook twisted her wrist, not enough to swear tenderness, just enough to make her gasp. Blood dripped onto the floor, coated floor in fat crimson blossoms. You wanted a weapon, he murmured, pressing her palm harder against the glass until her fingers spasmed. Here it is. Vian's vision swarmed, the pantry's edge dissolving into wine noses. She focused on the pain. Clean, sharp peel, letting it anchor her as Jungkook's breath fanned hot across her jaw. His grip slackened for a fraction of a second, long enough for her to jerk her hand sideways, deliberately dragging flesh across the glass. Blood sprayed across his unbuttoned collar. The Bordeaux shard bit deeper as Vian twisted her wrist against Jungkook's grips. Glass splitting skins with surgical precision. Blood arced across his jawline. Not a wound, but a brand. His pupils flared black in the pantry's dim light, fingers tightening around her bleeding palm like a man clutching a grenade with the pin already pulled. Clever, he breathed, thumb smearing her blood across his bottom lip. The metallic tang mingled with almond flours, still dusting his tongue. But you missed the carotid. His free hand slid behind her skulls, fingers tangling in hair matted with sweat and flour. Let me show you. The Bordeaux shard clattered to the floor between them, sleek with Vian's blood. Jungkook's finger tightened in her hair, tightening her head back to expose the fronting flutter of her pulse. His teeth grazed her throat, not biting, not yet, just tracing the vulnerable arc where knife meets sheath. A drop of her blood fell onto his Oxfords, blooming across the polished leather like a poppy in a snow. He inhaled sharply at the sight, his grip on her wrist shifting to press her bleeding palm flat against his sternum. The damp silk of his shirt clung instantly, warmth seeping through where her blood made his heart beat. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 6 muffled chimes through the pantry door, each tool vibrating in Vian's molars as Jungkook's teeth lingered at her jugular. Her blood painted his collarbones in abstract strokes, crimson on every silk, war mapped onto skin. He exhaled through his nose, warm breath skimming her damp throat, and she felt the exact moment his pulse skipped against her palm. Not fear, anticipation. "You are shaking," he murmured against her carotid. His free hand slid down her spine to press between her shoulder blades, forcing her chest flush against his. The movement ground floor into her wounds, not from fear. His tongue flicked out to taste the salt at her pulse point, from holding back. The grandfather clock's final chime still hung in the air when Jungkook's teeth finally broke skin, not the brutal bite Ryan expected, but a slow, deliberate penetration that sent white-hot licks of pain spiraling down her spine. She urged instinctively, her blood-slick palm slipping against his chest as her other hand scrambled for purchase on the wine barrel behind her. Her finger found the Bordeaux shard instead. Jungkook's chuckles vibrated against her throat as he pulled back just enough to watch her blood well along his teeth marks. "Predictable," he murmured, licking the coppery droplets from his lips. His grip on her hair tightened, forcing her to meet his gaze. "You'd rather bleed out than beg?" The Bordeaux shard trembled in Vian's grip, its jagged edge kissing her palm, a lover's promise of violence. Jungkook's gaze dropped to it, his lips curving around the taste of her blood. "Ah," he breathed as if greeting an old friend, his finger tightening in her hair, not pulling, simply holding, while his other hand slid down to wrap around her wrist, not to stop, to guide the shaft toward his own throat. Her pulse roared in her ears, the sharp tip dimpled the skin above his Adam's apple, a single ruby bead veiling where steel met flesh. Jungkook didn't flinch, his eyelashes lowered dark as ink broads against his cheekbones, and he exhaled through his nose, a sound almost like a relief. "Do it," he murmured, his thumb stroking the frantic rabbit quick beat in her wrist. "Or are you waiting for me to say please?" The Bordeaux shard trembled not from hesitation but from suppressed tremor in Vian's muscles as she fought to keep her grip steady. Jungkook's pulse throbbed against the glass tip, each heartbeat a metronome, counting down to the moment her cover would shatter. His breath ghosted over her knuckles, warm and clove-scented, as his finger tightened around her wrist in silent encouragement. The Bordeaux shard kissed Jungkook's throat with the same delicacy he dished on her browses, barely breaking skin, just enough to bloom crimson. His exhales fluttered against her fingers, warm and clove-scented, as his grip on her wrist shifted from restraint to guidance, urging the glass deeper. "Go on," he murmured, the words vibrating against the shard. Blood welled around its edges, dripping onto his already ruined collar. His other hand remained tangled in her hair, holding her close enough to share each breath. "Or are you waiting for me to?" The pantry door burst open before he could finish. Namjoon stood framed in the doorway, his usually pristine suit spattered with something dark and viscous. Colombians breached the west fold, he panted, eyes darting from the bloodied shard to Jungkook's torn shirt. They are burning the ledgers. Jungkook didn't release Wayan's wrist. His thumb stroked her pulse point absently, as if counting the beats between crises. How many? 12, maybe more. Namjoon's gaze lingered on Wayan's bleeding palm pressed against Jungkook's chest. His jaw tightened. They have the Ukrainian with them. The Bordiak shard clattered to the floor. Jungkook's finger uncurled from Wayan's hair so abruptly she swayed forward, catching herself on the wine barrel jagged edge. Floor puffed around her knees as she knelt, feigning weakness while her fingers closed around a slender bottleneck, not to strike but to catalog. Jungkook was already shrugging out of his ruined shirt. Blood and floor streaked his torso in abstract patterns. The rabbit skull's tattoo peeking through like a spectre, he tossed the silk to Namjoon without looking. Give this to the Italian's widow. Tell her it's my condolences. Namjoon cupped the shirt with 2 fingers, his nose wrinkling at the mingled scent of almonds and iron. And her, he nodded toward Wayan, still crouched among the shattered glass. Jungkook stepped over her without glancing down. She stays. His Oxford left bloody prints on the marble as he strode toward the door. Lock her in the east wing cellar. The cellar smelled of damp earth and regret. Wayan pressed her bleeding palm against the cold stone wall, counting the seconds between footsteps overhead. 23, then silence. The Bordiak's bottleneck sheet smuggled in her sleeve clinked against the floor as she rolled it between her fingers. Too thick for a shift, too thin for leverage. Useless. Moonlight seeped through the barred window, painting stripes across her thighs where Jungkook's grip had left bruises. She touched the bite mark on her throat, still weeping sluggishly, and wondered if he detested the underline in her blood. If he knew how close she'd come to driving that shard home. The cellar door groaned open at 3 a.m. Not Jungkook. Namjoon, his silhouette backlit by hallway sconces, a first aid kit dangling from his fingers. Don't, he said when she edged toward the bottleneck. I'm not here to play games. He knelt beside her, movement precise as a surgeon's, and peeled her blood-crusted fingers open. The wound glistened in the dim light, deep enough to scar, shallow enough to be intentional. Namjoon's jaw tightened as he dabbed iodine across the cut. You are lucky it wasn't your throat. She laughed, a hoarse, broken sound, and flexed her fingers against his grip. Is that what he told you to say? Namjoon's thumbs pressed into her palm just shy of painful. He didn't tell me anything. The bandage wound tight around her hand, pulling skin taut. You left floor prints leading straight to the dumbwaiter. A major mistake. The bottleneck rolled toward the drain grate as she shifted metal scraping stone. Namjoon's gaze flicked to it, then back to her face. He didn't reach for it. Instead, he produced a silver flask from his inner pocket, unscrewed it with his teeth, and tipped it over her palm. Bourbon burned through the bandage, seeping into raw flesh. She hissed through clenched teeth. Namjoon watched her throat work the way her pulse jammed under sweet silk skin. He knows, he said quietly, about Berlin, about Naples. The flash clicked shut, but not everything. Overhead, footsteps echoed, 3 sets, one dragging Namjoon's head titled, listening. His cufflinks carved the moonlight. When he reached up to adjust his earpiece, static crackled, then a voice. West Waltz, clear, pause once the Ukrainian in the solarium. Maya's finger twisted toward the bottleneck. Namjoon carved her wrist mid-movement, his grip firm but not crushing. Don't be stupid twice in one night. His thumb brushed her pulse point, a mimicry of Jungkook's earlier gesture, but without possessive heat, clinical, calculating. He's not the only one watching you. The cellar door groaned again. This time the scent of bergamot and gunpowder preceded him. Jungkook stood silhouetted in the doorway, sleeves rose to his elbow, forearms streaked with soot and something darker. His gaze skipped from Namjoon's hands to on her wrist to the blood-soaked bandage, then the bottleneck linting near the drain.